So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you happen to be in the world today. Welcome one and all to Coffee Talk. That's right, it's Coffee Talk. It is time to talk about what is going on in the world today. What's going on in the world? We'll take a look at some of the snippets from the news and have a little bit of a discussion. So, of course, you are watching Coffee Talk at Coffee Talk Live on YouTube, as well as at Prepper University on YouTube, simultaneously broadcasting on both channels at the exact same time, as well as at Coffee Talk Chat on X, formerly known as Twitter, and Fistful of Radio, fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon. And of course, for those of you who are listening and not able to see what's going on, I do read through as many of the comments as is reasonable so that you can keep up with the conversation, because I do try to respond to people. Now, I'll go ahead and acknowledge some of the individuals who have chosen to chime in thus far this afternoon. It's afternoon where I am anyways. I see Brian is here. Joshua is here. Excuse me. Boogers is here. Urban Angst is here with his cup of coffee. I have a cup. It's not necessarily coffee in there, but I have a big mug. I have a big mug. I like big mugs. Or a beaker if you're in the UK. It's a beaker. Glad you could join us here today. Hope everybody's doing all right as we get ready to dive into what is going on in the world today. A lot of nonsense. And of course, Dusty joining me in the background there, laying in the chair. I've got two others that you cannot see. I can go ahead and show them here really quickly. I see Helter is here, as well as Dragon chiming in, saying hello. There is Little Girl laying on the floor. I still don't have a name for her. I'll probably just end up calling her little girl. And then Granny Smith sitting in the background. And they're all looking at me. And they're probably all waiting for Dusty to get out of that chair so they can sit there, because everybody loves sitting back there for some reason. You know how cats are. Legends is here. Says, glad I found another streaming service. Yeah, hopefully this is working better. There's some features that the StreamYard had that this does not, that I would like to have. Like, for example, last week I tried to set someone as a mod and could not do it, but I could have done it on StreamYard, just as an example. But yeah, as long as it looks and sounds clear, I'm doing the best I can. I don't have a lot of professional equipment. I don't work for CNN or whatever. Sven is here, says big mugs and you cannot lie. That's right. And Puck is here. Leave the camera on the cats to trick you YouTube police. Yeah, no kidding. That's what I should do, is get an AI overlay and have my face be a cat and talk like that. And Holly is here. Glad you could pop in here today as we get ready to dive in to see what is going on in the world today. And Legends had pointed out there that, yeah, I could. Worst case scenario, you could switch back next year. Yeah, because you have to pay for a year or else you can't get a discount. And I needed the discount, trust me. I could barely pull it off. Was having some issues and was without the StreamYard for a little bit and had to do it directly through YouTube, which is not fun at all. Directly through YouTube is choppy at best. So here we go. Here's one that is being swept under the rug. A news story being swept under the rug. Very hard to find anyone covering this. And it's about Kamala Harris, excuse me. And this is from Breaking Digest. CCTV, and that is closed caption, of course, closed caption television, if there even is such a thing anymore, but that's what they call it. Footage shows Kamala Harris exiting the U.S. Capitol at 11:21 a.m. on January 6th. which means that the Department of Justice lied about her location to prosecute hundreds of Trump supporters. And here she is. That's a snapshot of her leaving the building. And that timestamp is 11:21 a.m. Says earlier on Tuesday, new CCTV footage was posted showing Kamala Harris exiting the U.S. Capitol at 11:21 a.m. on January 6th, 21. The Department of Justice lied, claiming that Kamala Harris was still inside the building during the protests that day and used that lie to persecute and prosecute hundreds of Trump supporters. The video was released today by Free State Will. And it says the corrupt DOJ indicted hundreds of Trump supporters based on the false claim that Kamala Harris was still inside the building when the Capitol was initially breached. According to author and political commentator Julie Kelly, the basis for the charge of remaining on restricted grounds was the presence of Kamala Harris and Mike Pence at the Capitol. So the basis for the most common misdemeanor, and this is the legalese here, entering, remaining on, or restricted grounds was the presence of Harris and Pence in the Capitol as Secret Service protectees. The area automatically is restricted. Politico broke the story in November 2021. Harris had left prior to any breach, and indictments claiming Harris was at the Capitol were inaccurate. So essentially, and I think I can play this clip if anybody wants to see it, but you get the basic idea. Film footage has now been released, and they're not talking about it. It's hardly in the news at all. That they used the fact that her presence was there, which makes anything around her automatically restricted, as a reason or one of the charges that was put against everybody who's been run through court for the Capitol so-called riot. Now, it's been determined that she wasn't even there, which means that the Department of Justice lied, which means those people, at least on that charge, were prosecuted unjustly. So are those people going to be exonerated because now there's evidence that the district attorney and the Department of Justice lied and bent the rules to get an extra conviction? Are people who are still in jail going to be released? Are you going to compensate anyone who did jail time based on this? That's a huge question, and it's not one that's going to be answered easily or at all. I see All People has joined us today. And 115 wants to know, is that a shirt press or a shield? It is a press. It's a heat press, not necessarily for shirts. It's actually a heat press for comic books, because I can clean and press comics professionally. Puck says, what a surprise, crooked Democrats. And Bob says, you're on early or have your clocks gone forward? Yeah, you know it was daylight savings. So that's probably screwing a lot of people up. It screws the cats up. The shelter cats that are waiting out back for food are turning up late. Gary Edwards is here. Dragon says, sad to see the level of corruption that's going on in this country. No kidding. And Puck says, Trump promised to free all January 6 political prisoners, is my understanding. He should. He should. I mean, you can't justify giving people, some of them damn near 30 years in prison for what? Disorderly conduct. If you want to be honest about the charges, loitering, disorderly conduct, depending upon where you were, you could argue riot or not. Gary Edwards says it was a setup. Both sides were in on the bamboozle, scripted really. And Urban says there are many huge questions that we all know the answer to unofficially. Yeah, and you can't talk about it. Obviously, not even in the not even in the press, because this is not circulating. I had to dig for this story. They're not talking about it, at least not yet, but that's major. That's major. The Department of Justice knowingly lied in court, and the district attorney who was in charge of the prosecutions had to know this also and still went forward with it. You hid evidence to force prosecutions. But yeah, you can trust the government, sure. Bob67 says our hours go forward on the 31st of March. Yeah, the whole daylight savings thing is a load of crap anyways. I think we all know that by now. They still force you to do it in most places. Helter says, how are these January 6 individuals going to take over the government with karate? It makes me sick every time I hear them say armed insurrectionists. Yeah, I know. Indeed. And Joshua says, if we have a Trump versus Biden rematch, I'm watching purely for the entertainment. And Huck says that Crypt Keeper Pelosi was hiding most of the camera footage. Yeah, Crypt Keeper, Gatekeeper versus Crypt Keeper there. And Sven says, so this is a felony and like a massive one. Yeah, it should be. You would think so. And felony charges should be brought against anyone from the Department of Justice or the district attorney's office who was aware of this. But good luck. And they'll scapegoat it and they'll narrow it down to blaming one person and then put that person in jail. They'll have an appointed scapegoat, like Fauci is an appointed scapegoat. If anything ever really blows up with the whole C virus scam, it'll fall on Fauci, even though there's 1,000 people involved. You know how that works. And then Raccoon says hi. How you doing, Raccoon? And I've mentioned it before that this happened in Boston with the drug charges. They had something like 28,000 drug convictions based on faulty data from the laboratory. So people were given drug charges who didn't have possession of drugs or did not have narcotics in their system at the time, but the lab said they did, and they were convicted and put in jail based on that, to the tune of about 28,000 people over the course of like a decade in Massachusetts. And they found out, and the courts not only refused to reopen those cases and re-examine them, because all 28,000 of those cases technically should be thrown out according to the legal system, but the courts in Boston were like, no, oh well, we're not going to bother with that. Too bad. But we're going to find out what happened, and they narrowed it down to one single lab technician and blamed her and put her in jail. And I'm like, yeah, sure. One person doctored 28,000 drug reports, and no one knew about it. No one else was involved. Yeah, sure. I believe that. And Zane is here. Glad you could make it, Zane. Hopefully daylight savings didn't confuse too many people. Although you might have some confusion Wednesday. I believe it's this Wednesday I have a dental appointment. So we're back to that again. I don't even want to think about it. Because I never did get that root canal that I was supposed to have. But yeah, I have to. So on Wednesday, I might have to do this earlier. So just a heads up. And Marvel Fan is here. Glad you could make it. Thanks for joining us today as we shift around to the next topic of discussion. Next topic of discussion. And this is a Fox News article. You'll love this. As if things aren't screwed up enough and you're already not trusting the government as it is. Top red state official demands answer on Biden's executive order attempting to register illegals to vote. And that's Executive Order 14019. 14019 that they're going to be talking about here. So Mississippi's Secretary of State has sent a letter to President Biden's Department of Justice asking it to stop enforcing a Biden executive order that he warns is being used to attempt to register ineligible convicts and illegal immigrants to vote. Quote, as you are aware, on March 7th, 2021, President Biden issued Executive Order number 14019, which sought to turn the Department of Justice agencies from their historical missions of law enforcement. The ad is messing me up. Hold on a second. Law enforcement to voter registration and get out of voting operations. Mississippi Secretary of State Michael Watson wrote in a letter to Attorney General Merrick Garland this week. So basically, he wasted his time writing a letter. These efforts are an intrusion into state matters and a misuse of federal revenue and resources. In addition, it appears that these efforts have led to agencies under your charge attempting to register people to vote, including potentially ineligible felons, and to co-opt state and local officials into accomplishing this goal. The executive order in question was signed by Biden in 21 and was billed as an attempt to combat racial discrimination and protect the right to vote. Who's being turned away since Jim Crow in a handful of states? Jim Crow in a couple of places that, even though they had a legal right to vote, would harass people and try to intimidate them out of it. Who is standing there and saying, no, you're Chinese, get out of here. No, you're Hispanic, get out of here. Who's doing that? Biden. So here we go. And instructed government agencies to consider ways to expand citizen opportunities to register to vote and obtain information about and participate in the electoral process. In his letter, Watson outlines concerns that the executive order forces the U.S. Marshals Service to modify agreements with jails that require them to provide voter registration materials and facilitate voting by mail. According to the Marshals Service, they are modifying 936 contracts or intergovernmental agencies to require state and local government complicity in the potential registration of ineligible prisoners to vote. The letters state it further requires the Department of Justice to facilitate voter registration and mail voting for individuals in the custody of the Bureau of Prisons. This program creates numerous opportunities for ineligible prisoners to be registered to vote in Mississippi. Okay. I have an issue with the idea that the Department of Justice had to an enforcement arm for voting in the first place. That bothers me right there. Never mind the fact that they're trying to compensate for their status quo, if you will, for their requirement of how many people they're supposed to get to vote or whatever the case may be, by trying to do mail-in ballots with incarcerated felons. That's a huge problem. But yeah, that bothers me that they even have the Department of Justice doing any of that. The Department of Justice, their job, not that they do it right anyways, is not to enforce voter registration, to combat so-called racism. Give me a break. Unbelievable. Urban says, been avoiding the dentist myself. Got to fix an incomplete root canal that is now covered with a crown, which has to first be removed and replaced, all out of pocket. Yeah. In my case, what it was is I explained it earlier, or I explained it a few months back when I was having the whole problem with the tooth in the first place, the tooth that broke. And they were like, yeah, it needs a root canal. And then the dentist messed it up, and I had to go to another dentist who looked at it, and he says, yeah, that's because it's got a double root. It's a rare thing. The root loops and reconnects. And so an endodontist has to do it, not a dentist. He should never have touched that tooth. So I go to the endodontist and they examined it and they said, yeah, we can fix it. But even with the insurance, it's like damn near $1,000 out of pocket to get it done. And I was like, I can't do it. And that's whether they can fix it or not. If they go in there and then something happens and they're like, you know what? Sorry, bro. I know now you got me saying it. Sorry, buddy. Now we can't fix it after all. I still have to pay that. And I'm like, shit. So I just haven't gotten it done. And I got a dental appointment now Wednesday with the dentist who repaired the botched job that the other dentist did in the first place, who referred me to the endodontist. And he's going to be like, dude, why does this tooth still look like this? But what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And Gary Edwards says, in a banana republic, criminals get to vote. Yeah, I guess so. And Sven says, Democrats are behind every single systemic racist policy without exception. Yeah, it sure looks that way, doesn't it? Helter says, if illegals are allowed to register, Biden print absentee ballots for the 10 million recent arrivals and have factories fill out the ballots for him. It's the same thing they did in 2020. And Puck says, remember, Garland is using crooked Department of Justice to challenge any state in court over their strengthening of voter and election laws. As I move around here, Urban says the one thing Obama did well was the mass deportations of illegal migrants that he initiated and actually followed through with. Yeah, he did throw a lot out. He did throw a lot out. People forget that. And Prime Mover says, I believe anti-discrimination efforts when there is no longer affirmative action or DEI. Ooh, I totally get that. And Dragon says they're sure the ballots from the dead people and those that have not voted for years are already filled out, ready to be mailed in for this year's election. I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised. And we're going to jump from DC. We're going to jump from DC to New York City. New York City. New York City, where Governor Hochul has been really pissing everybody off. And the mayor of New York, too, has been really pissing everybody off. This is a New York Daily News article. Governor Hochul rolls back big guns in National Guard New York City subway bag searches. Okay. Yeah, that's brilliant. You made everybody angry by adding on top of the transit authority 1,000 municipal police and state troopers. I thought you had no money for the police. And 750 National Guards to basically search everybody going into the subway. And you think, God, she looks like she's made out of wax in that photo. She looks terrible. There's way too much makeup on that woman trying to look young. Way too much. And you know she's old and out of shape because you can see it in her neck. And then her cheeks are all like super round, like she had Botox. I wouldn't be surprised if she did. So here we go. That's enough insulting the picture. Governor Kathy Hochul has pulled back the big guns in her subway safety surge, ordering the National Guard not to carry military-grade assault rifles when they check riders' bags for weapons. Assault rifles. Here we go. Many of the 750 troops Hochul deployed Wednesday to check riders' backpacks, hauling laptops or school books or bags carrying groceries, were carrying M4 carbines, or carbines, depending upon your pronunciation, military assault rifles whose 5.56 millimeter rounds can defeat some body armor. All that's not necessary. All that's not necessary. And they're not assault rifles. I hate that term. Unlike their civilian counterpart, the AR-15, the M4s are capable of automatic fire. That's right. And I'm glad they point that out anyways. That's an important point because, man, you got to really pull strings to get automatic anything as a private citizen. After a flurry of news coverage showing the rifle-carrying guard members checking strap hangers, totes at Grand Central and Penn Station, the governor ordered the troops to carry out their work without the large guns. A Hochul spokesperson told the Daily News the order was issued immediately after the deployment of the guards for bag checks. Holchel's order to stow the long guns followed photos on news sites and social media showing well-armed soldiers checking riders properly. It also came amid concern from civil libertarians that the governor's subway safety plan is militarizing public transit. Too late. And for the record, the people down there from like this sheriff's office and from the municipal police, many of them were also carrying M4s. Okay. The order took time to implement. Soldiers were seen carrying the rifles well into Thursday, but the police had them too. But by Friday evening rush hour, not a single long gun was visible among the dozens of soldiers and law enforcement officers at the entrance to the number 4, 5, 6, and 7 trains below Grand Central Terminal. At Penn Station, a mass of law enforcement officers and guard members stood near the entrance to the numbers 1, 2, and 3 trains, all wearing only sidearms. A few hundred feet away in the Long Island Railroad concourse, 2 guard members stood before a storefront. One carried an M4. All right. So you made everybody mad by turning the subway into a police state. And you think you can walk it back now by saying, oh, well, they don't have the rifles now. There, that's better. They encroach on you 10 steps, walk back 2, and act like they're doing you a favor. That's what government does. Makes me sick. Oh my God. Makes me sick. And Puck says no such thing as an assault rifle. Yeah, it's a tool. It's designed to be a weapon, but it's primarily a tool. I mean, anything could be called assault. If I beat somebody down with a hammer, it's an assault hammer. Spectre wants to know what he missed. Governor Holchel, Biden, Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris, it's now been revealed that she was not in the Capitol during the incident on January 6th, and that hundreds of people were convicted in court because her presence makes it a restricted zone and she wasn't there. Urban says, who remembers the 1981 subway vigilante called Bernard Goetz? I just noticed that Wikipedia took down his biography page and only kept the subway incident page. I did not know that. And Puck says, so they'll be carrying M9 pistols then. And Prime says, assault rifle, it looks scary. Yeah, if it's black, it must be scary if it's a rifle. Dragon says, Holchel is a perfect example of the saying, better the devil you know than the devil you don't. Yeah. And Sven says, getting used to it in New York City. This is the route to being ruled. And Urban makes a correction, says it was in 1984, actually, the incident in the subway. He was probably watching Charles Bronson in Death Wish and thought it was a good idea. Heavy Souls. It says, of course, you can't see the long guns. They're inside windows. And Helter says it's becoming more and more akin to Nazi Germany. Are they going to start asking for papers as you travel through the city? It's clear there is a class system. No, there can't be, because that would be racist. And Zane said that's their way of keeping the peace. And Semper Fi says, oh boy, joined just in time to see my governor's face in the stream. Yuck. Yeah, no kidding. Catch up a couple more comments and then we'll shift around. Gary Edwards says, if you let too many terrorists into the country due to open borders, then you have to search bags in public transportation. Brian says it's only guns that get labeled as assault weapons. Yeah, whatever they don't want. And Brian says, as well as blamed in homicides and mass killings. And we'll go ahead and shift around here. That was Governor Holchel, and it's still a mess. It's still a mess, and I'm sure you've probably seen this story. And this is a Daily Mail article, if it ever comes up, because you know this is Restream's a little slow. Fire Department, FDNY, commissioner is branded a fascist pit bull for threatening to hunt down firefighters who booed AG Letitia James and chanted Trump during a speech in Brooklyn. That did happen. That did happen. And now those firefighters are being threatened for exercising their free speech. FDNY Commissioner Laura Kavanaugh has been branded a fascist pit bull after announcing plans to seek out the unruly firefighters who booed New York City Attorney General Letitia James as she gave a speech earlier this week. James was speaking at New York Fire Department promotion ceremony on Thursday when the jeers began before she even took the stage. She's not popular with the working class. The firefighters began shouting Donald Trump's name as James appeared for calm for those who gathered at the appealed for calm from those gathered at the Christian Cultural Center's Brooklyn campus. But it appears those behind the chanting may not get away with it. If the fire department chiefs have anything to do with it. FDNY Chief of Department John Hodgins sent an email to department leaders warning of an impending investigation by the Bureau of Investigation and Trials, that is the BITS department, into the booing and Trump chants directed at James. Hodgins has urged those individuals to come forward voluntarily to avoid being pursued by the department, which is currently reviewing video footage of the entire ceremony. BITS is investigating this, so they will figure out who the members are, Hodges wrote FDNY chiefs on Saturday. I recommend they come forward. I have been told by the commissioner it will be better for them if they come forward and we don't have to hunt them down. The deputy chiefs shall direct the captain of the company to make a list of those who come forward and send it directly to FDNY operations. I realize members may not come forward, but they should know that there is a clear video of the entire incident, and they will be contacted by BITS if they don't. The Uniformed Fire Officers Association also warned its members on Saturday of the plan, noting how the department was in possession of video footage of the event. As part of the discussion, questions may be asked to specific UFOA members over their actions or their recollections. James had been invited to speak at the event, who was held in honor the Reverend Pamela Holmes, the department's second female chaplain, and the first black woman to hold that title. Whoop-de-doo. Come on, we're in a house of God. Simmer down. Thank you for getting it out of your system, James said before beginning her speech. It is not no church is a house of God. Don't get me started. James was speaking weeks after she won a $355 million judgment against Trump for inflating the value of his properties. He was also banned from business in New York for 3 years. As far as inflating value on properties, everybody does that. Anyone selling any building, house, anything, land, tries to inflate the value. Seriously. The small but noisy section of the crowd ignored her calls for them to simmer down and continued to boo for another minute, then loudly chanting Trump, 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 Trump. Eventually, the hecklers ran out of steam until James ad-libbed her speech as she thanked the firefighters who tried to save her mother, who died of breast cancer. I pray for those firefighters who stood with me when my mother was dying, and they worked on her for an hour in my house, not knowing who I was. And then she was booed because they think she's full of crap. Oh no, where am I here? As I try to catch up, because I'm sure I'm way freaking behind. Lamb is the light says their comments won't show up. I'm trying to say something about bullets. I see this comment, Lamb. I don't know why your comments aren't coming up. Semper says it's okay for the left to boo and chant, but if anyone else does it, it's illegal and they'll make you pay. Yeah. Raccoon wants to know how it's a crime. It isn't. It falls within their First Amendment rights to be able to, if they are at an event, to show their displeasure. She came out there. They don't like her. They booed. Tough. But now they're going to sit there. They weren't on duty. They were not on duty. I could understand if they were on duty. if they were active. But they're not active. They're attending a meeting. They have a right to heckle under the law, and the promoters have a right to ask them to leave. Also, say, "Hey guys, do that. Go outside and do that. Whatever. You know how it goes." And have the audacity to sit there and say, "Okay, you know what? We're going to find you. We're going to find you in the video footage, and you come forward now, and you won't be punished nearly as bad." So you can't have an opinion. Helter says, "I read an article where the commissioner said they weren't going to hunt anyone down. Then they said they will find out who did it. Kind of sounds like she's hunting them down." Yeah, she is. And this is the latest article on the subject. Sven says the commissioner needs to be sued by the union. Yeah, that'll be interesting. Gary Edwards says nanny state spanking. Zane said it's only a crime if the government says it's a crime. And that George Carlin said rights are in your head. Correct. Damien says Canada banned rifles. They came for hand cannons. England is trying to ban knives. Where does it end? It ends where you are helpless in a bird cage. And the name of that bird cage is 15-Minute City, where you can't move or breathe. Like in 1984, where the TV watches you. Remember in 1984 where he's exercising, he has to do his morning routine, and he wasn't feeling well, so he stopped. And then the exercises stopped, and the instructor was told to address him specifically. "Excuse me, number so-and-so, why aren't you moving? Do I need to send someone around there? Do you need a doctor?" Dragon makes a great point there. It said, "Should be an I am Spartacus moment. 100% of the firefighters should come forward, even those that weren't there." Yeah, everybody should jump forward. Gary says it was an insurrection, and Lamb's Light says they keep kicking it out. That's unfortunate. That yeah, I know, and YouTube does that. YouTube does that, unfortunately, Lamb's Light, because I will rarely interfere with the comment section. I just let people say whatever they're going to say most of the time. But ScrewTube does police that. Their AI polices even the comments. And Monkey says, "But yet Trump is a dictator according to the media." No kidding. And Gary Edwards said Caligula once sent Praetorians into the stands to execute the Romans who booed the blue chariot team. There you go. And Puck says UK is registering crossbows. Well, for the record, though, crossbows, depending upon the arrow tip type, I shouldn't even say this, but the right type of arrow in a bow or a crossbow can defeat body armor. Just making an observation for the point of discussion, including a trauma plate. Think about that. Anyways, and Lamb says they'll take Trump as a dictator any day over Biden. We're still in New York here. Got one more. I think one more here in New York. This one will. This is a New York Post article. Saw this coming a mile away. Black New Yorkers are already clashing over who should get reparations as state panels start. They're already fighting over it. Where's my check? Where's my money? Send me a check. Pay me. Where's my free sneakers? A New York commission that will recommend whether to give reparations for slavery and discrimination to Black residents hasn't even met yet, but it's already sparked a rift among Black New Yorkers over who should be eligible for a payout. What makes you think you're going to get a payout? People just amaze me. A similar panel in California said monetary reparations should be limited only to descendants of chattel enslaved persons in the U.S., 360,000 per eligible person. Holy crap. But not for other Black Americans who may have suffered from discrimination. Even with that restriction, the price tag for the proposal has been estimated at an eye-watering $800 billion, and that's California. However, a huge segment of the New York's Black residents are not descendants of slavery. In New York City alone, well over 500,000 people are Afro-Caribbean or African immigrants. Exactly. That's the problem. But some New Yorkers, black activists say California reparations package was too restrictive. Because, yeah, where's my money? Bertha Lewis, head of the Brooklyn-based Black Institute, told the Post that reparations must be considered for all Black residents because they have suffered decades of systemic racism resulting from slavery, even if they are not direct descendants of slaves. That's a false narrative, Lewis said. I don't give an F what California did. That's your lawmaker right here. I don't give a F what California did. That's a false narrative. Where's my check? You can't just say only descendants of slaves from the South. Black people face the effect of slavery and discrimination simply because they are black. Yeah, okay. Really, if that's wow, she's airbrushed. Whoever this woman is right here that was just talking, is that a commercial ad? Wow, she was airbrushed. Either that or she had like an inch of foundation on. But you knew this was coming. You knew this was coming. They're already fighting over it, and it's not even established if New York is even going to do it. They're just in talks to decide if it's even a good idea or if it would even work, if it's even plausible. Unbelievable. And Prime Mover said high-powered crossbow bolt can go through even a Kevlar helmet or a police riot shield. Yeah, I know. I've experimented with it. I can't show that kind of stuff on ScrewTube, though. But yeah, a good arrow on a crossbow or a bow will slice right through body armor. Lamb says they hurt their toe once. Someone laughed at them. I want reparations. No kidding. I want reparations for spending the first 4 or 5 years in public school being called cracker and honky every day because I was part of the forced busing phenomenon. For those of you who were too young, when they were trying to decentralize certain schools, they attempted to force a balance by taking kids from certain neighborhoods and busing them elsewhere. So I had to spend like an hour and a half, 2 hours on the damn bus every morning to be carted all the way out to schools in Roxbury, which is a huge, predominantly black housing development, quite frankly, and be one or two only white kids in a class with like 38, 40 kids who beat you up every day and call you cracker and honky. Yeah, where's my reparations? Urban says the reason they're clashing is because they are leftists before they are black, and they will eat each other for a promise and a fart. Wow. Gary Edwards says just rolling your eyes at liberal clowns will eventually be considered an assault. And Damien says they're Afro-Caribbean and Scottish. Dragon says, fine, let's do reparations since I'm a white man and term slave comes from Slavic, the original slaves. You can subtract what I owe from what you owe me, and I'll take the difference. There you go. No kidding. But yeah, they're already eating each other alive over this, and all they want is a damn check. And I needed to do. I did a video talking about reparations and talking about heirs' property and what that is, because reparations have already been granted generations ago to direct slaves at the time and their offspring and the family groups that worked on plantations in the South primarily. And people gave me grief for it. And I wanted to follow that up because I had one guy who was really pissed off that because he was like telling me that my idea of reparations is bullshit. Well, it's not my idea of reparations. It's what was done. Okay. But yeah, that's a whole nother talking point that I need to get to. And Django says they only got the notification 40 minutes in. I'm surprised you got it at all. And Django says, what about financial slavery that has ruined the USA today? No kidding. No kidding. And Django says, black still cream cracker at people again. I'm racist for telling them to get the F out of my neighborhood. Okay. But, oh, Casper. I don't know if I've been called Casper. Urban says, don't forget Casper. I used to get honky and cracker a lot. I used to get it a lot. And people are so bent up about it. I had an experience once with a guy, a family member of my ex, one of my exes. And keeping in mind, I was never married. I have to point that out a few times. I'm married now, but that's the only time I've ever been married. You leaving? Oh, little girl left the room. Dusty's still here keeping me company, though. There was some relative who got in my face, and he says, I'll just let you know right now, I don't like white people. And then sarcastically, I responded by saying, good, they don't like you either. And then he looked like he was going to cry. He's like, see? There it is. There it is. There what is, asshole? You said something first. And I retaliate, and you can't take it. Go sit in the corner and suck your thumb. And I had a few other choice words for him, but I can't get into it. Her family, this will show you how bad this is. She sent photos of us to her parents. And they sent the photos back with doodles on my pictures. It was the two of us together, and they drew little horns and little glasses and little goatee and mustache and shit on my face. But I'm racist. Incredible. And Puck says, I've heard that George is a derogatory term for white people. I don't know if I've heard that one. And then Lamb says, I lived in the Deep South my whole life. Are there racists? Yeah. Does it hold anyone back? No. Yeah. And I know also hardcore from experience, because, again, my wife is black, who is a direct slave descendant. I've mentioned it several times. She can trace her lineage because her family lives on heirs property, which was a reparations package generations ago. The family still lives there. The land can't be touched. It's protected. The government can't touch it. The state can't touch it. It's passed down from family member to family member indefinitely. And she grew up obviously in an all black neighborhood with all black leadership. And yeah, there's nothing holding them back. Is there slavery? Of course. I mean, slavery. Yeah, there is slavery in the world, not in the United States, unless you want to be considered a wage slave, which I think does count. And that affects everybody. But is there racism? Of course. But man, you can work through it. And Urban reminds us that slavery is alive and well in Saudi Arabia and other Arabic-speaking Muslim majority places. That is true. There is true. And mentions also hierarchy of skin color pricing. Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, that's some of my own experiences and so on. But you get tired of that. You really do get tired of all that nonsense and how they carry on with that garbage. Now, this is something I wanted to share here. I thought was really interesting. And Helter says immigrants nor their descendants live with the trauma and plunder of American chattel slavery and Jim Crow. No, they have no idea what it looks like. They have no idea what it looks like. You forgot to give me ketchup with my fries. It's racism. They don't know what it really looks like. The real evil, ugly face of it, if you've ever experienced it. But anyways, I thought this is fascinating. This is actually an email I got from Amazon, and I want to share this real quick. And Brian says, sounds like your whole ex's family screwed up in the head. I saw the Hurricane Katrina welfare video. Yeah, they are. I'm glad I'm away from that. That was a nightmare, and I regret every minute of it now. But here we go. Prime, because Amazon is now your pharmacist. And they pick the perfect time They've been doing a pilot program with pharmacy for a couple of years, but they jumped off when people in Walgreens and CVS started going on strike and said, you know what, screw Walgreens and CVS, we'll be your pharmacy, and it'll be like half the price. Now they're going to be your doctor. Your care team on call 24/7, now priced for Prime. Always have a care team on call for cold, flu, whatever's bothering you. Prime members get on-demand care for $9 a month and can add up to 5 family members for $6 a month extra each. Quality care meets convenience. One Medical for Prime members is the goodness of dedicated care team with the convenience of Prime, so you can feel better even faster. What they're basically doing is doing like general practitioner care via Zoom through Prime for $9 a month. No more doctor visits. Oh, I love it. George Jetson, the Jetsons had it right. The Jetsons had it right. Online doctor visits for $9 a month for your coverage. Oh my God. Urban says they question the motives of Black community activists who focus on the past instead of the current suffering of their people the world over. And Django says MLK was the only notable Black community activist who advised judging people on the content of their character. Yes. And all people commenting on the heirs land, it says, were not just to the blacks. Most slave descendants did not lay claim to heirs land. Many of them had such retaken by the feds, just like with Indians. And Monkey says, farmers.gov, heirs property from the Department of Agriculture. Yeah, that's where you can find most of your information on it. That's where you can find most of the information on it. As I bounce back here, I thought that was funny, and I wanted to share that because that's what it's come to. That's what it's come down to, ladies and gentlemen. Doctor's visits through Amazon. Doctor's visits through Amazon. And another, and I can't catch up with all of the, I can't catch up on all the comments. Puck says dig deeper, assisted suicide is in there somewhere. In Canada, maybe. In Canada, maybe they want you to get rid of all your old people. This is from Science Alert, with another big health scare for you. A bit more legitimate, however, than what you've been seeing. Yeah, assisted suicide app. Assisted suicide app. They can have assisted suicide booths like in Futurama, which is really just the take on Soylent Green because they did the same thing. And Django says, don't believe most people even knew about heirs property, didn't even until he brought it up a few months ago. Yeah, and that's why when we were down there, we did a video on it on the spot on heirs property. My wife and I, it's in the archive. And because the question comes up, why doesn't anybody know about this? Oh, they know. Your activists and your politicians, they know. She said that the NAACP chapter leader lives there. So I'm sure he knows damn well that there's such a thing as heirs property or heirs land. But Science Alert, plastic found inside more than 50% of plaque from clogged arteries. Plastics are now everywhere, with tiny fragments found in several major organs of the human body, including the placenta. Given how easily the microscopic particles infiltrate our tissues, it's vital that we learn exactly what kinds of risks they can pose to our health. Researchers have been busy studying the effects of microplastics in many replicas of organs and in mice to get a sense of how they might impact the human body. However, the concentrations of microplastics used in those studies might not reflect people's real-world exposure, and few studies have been done in humans. Now, A small study in Italy has found shards of microplastics in fatty deposits surgically removed from patients who had an operation to open up their clogged arteries and reported that their health outcomes nearly 3 years later. Removing fatty plaques from narrowed arteries in a procedure called a cardioid endarterectomy reduces the risk of future strokes. The team behind the new study, led by Rafael Marfella, a medical researcher at the University of Campania in Naples, wondered how the risk of stroke as well as heart attacks and death compared between patients who had microplastics in their plaque and those who did not. Following 257 patients for 34 months, the research found 60% of them had measurable amounts of polyethylene in plaque pulled out of their fat-thickened arteries, and 12% also had polyvinyl chloride in extracted fat deposits. That's freaking scary. And you know, I bet you that the way that it's introduced into their bodies is through all the medications that they're taking. If they're taking capsules, what are those capsules made out of? A lot of them are probably plastic, some form of plastic. And that's surprising to me because I know a dissolving plastic. I know that you can make a type of plastic with corn syrup. So I don't know why they don't make an organic version. Django Lamb's Light says that if they'd like to see the stopping of slavery today, and mentions about kids. I totally agree with that. And Helter says time for injections of nanorobots to mine out arteries for rare materials. It's possible dystopian nightmare that people like Musk and Gates might try to bring to life. And Puck says, is this a diversion from the rubbery growths found in dead vaccinated people? Who knows? We talked about that last week. I think it was Monday, right? We talked about the rubbery growths because it's organic. It's organic proteins, but they don't believe that it came from blood because it lacks a lot of the minerals that you would find in blood, copper, iron, and so forth. Gary Edwards said microplastic human turning into Barbies and Kens. Absolutely. And monkeys, glass bottles and drinks. I doubt companies will go back to glass because it would hit their profit barely. You know, and that's an interesting point because I remember, I'm old enough to remember when all bottles were glass bottles, Monkey. So there's an interesting point to be made there. And the glass industry was advertising at that time in the early 70s, early to mid 70s, to keep using glass. Now, they obviously they didn't want to lose money. It's like, all right, if everything's going to be put in plastic bottles, we're going to sell less glass. So yeah, we want to step forward and warn you not to do that. The appeal of the plastic bottle, it's easier to work with, it's lighter, and it's less likely to break. All right. So yeah, it sounds good. The argument that was made by the glass industry at the time was a safety issue because it is plastic. As it degrades over time, you know, if you're past that expiration date or whatever, the plastic is going to seep into what you're eating or drinking, and then you'll be eating or drinking the plastic or the chemicals that were used to manufacture it. If you've got something in a glass bottle or jar, it's just glass. But and the glass is sanitary. The plastic may not necessarily be so. They're right. That was true, but it wasn't enough for people to say, okay, it's cheaper to ship because it weighs less. It's easier to make or to mold than the glass and less likely to break. So yeah, screw you, glass industry. That's what it boiled down to. That's what it boiled down to. And Damien wants to know what are natural ways to get rid of plaques or microplastics. Try not to eat or drink anything out of plastic. Watch out for the watch out for the expirations, definitely. That's why I warn people, if you store bottled water for emergencies, you still want to filter that bottled water, because if it's been sitting long enough, it's going to start eroding the inside of that bottle. Avoid pills and medications and vitamins that are in capsules, things like that. Don't try not to eat it. Try not to eat as much of it as you can. But with that, we are at the top of the hour. So I'm going to go ahead and remember to sign off, or start to sign off. Remember, we are on Coffee Talk. So you are listening to and or watching Coffee Talk, and that is at Coffee Talk Live or at Prepper University on YouTube, simultaneously broadcasting at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time most of the time, except this Wednesday coming up. I'm going to have to change it. And at Coffee Talk Chat on X, formerly known as Twitter. And of course, Fistful of Radio, fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon. So with that, I will go ahead and sign off. Thanks to everybody who was able to join us here today. Hope you got something out of the conversation. And with that, we will go ahead and sign